Hello. Are you somebody who has gotten to the end of the year, or this happens to you at the end of each year, where you hear people talking about goals, vision boards, or New Year's resolutions, all the things, right? And you're like, ugh, that doesn't work for me. Or I've tried that and I ended up feeling like a complete failure and I got a month in, right? And you're like, I don't know how to do things different, to make a shift in my life. Well, recently I held what I called 2025 Visioning, and it was an event where you could come and we just dug real deep on what our year was like in the past year and what we wanted going forward. And we just did it a little differently, but what stood out to me was I had like 5 takeaways from this event about what seemed to be overall things that work well and things that people just maybe don't think of doing when they're thinking about the year ahead and wishing and desiring for more change. And if you find yourself wishing to experience life differently, want to make shifts in your life, I invite you to stay tuned to just kind of be able to ponder what are some ways I can review the year and go into the next year differently. And that way, when I end next year, I can look back and go, okay, all right, maybe I did make some progress this year. Right on. Good job, self. I'm Erica, and I am your host of Powered by Joy podcast. And here we like to talk about ways to get empowered to make shifts through more ease, play, joy, and adventure, but also just getting in that right headspace of like, I can do these things. I can have a different life if I choose to do so. So if you're exploring those ideas, I invite you to tune into today. So the first takeaway I want to dive straight into is that I noticed when I was working with everybody, I observed that people often look back at their last year and they just go off of their memory, right? And they think, we tend to go right to the things we didn't do. So let's say you set some goals last year. I want to lose 10 pounds and I am going to go on a date every month or week with my partner, or I'm going to start meditating, or name it. I'm going to read a book a month. All these things. And you really wanted to have some change in your life, and you look back and like, okay, well, didn't do it. So it's very normal for us as humans to look back and see what we sucked at, what we failed at, what we didn't accomplish. And we can often be doing this year review where you hear people talking about, oh, you should look back at your year. Well, guess what? Sometimes it's painful if you're looking just based on your own memory, because we as humans are programmed to look for the errors and the things we did wrong over looking for our wins and successes. And so when I was going through this, I wanted people to have their eyes open to both. So not just having on rose-colored glasses, right, and looking for just the wins, but allowing yourself to look at what happened in a factual way. So we were able to go back and look and go, oh yeah, I actually did have some wins. I didn't just not accomplish these goals. I actually made progress on them. I had the same experience for myself because I had set some intentions and was like, oh, I don't think I focused on them very much. But when I went in and actually looked and reflected on each of those, I was like, okay, maybe I didn't get where I thought I wanted to go, but I actually did work in all of these areas and I actually did make progress, which means I'm a different, better version of myself than I was ending 2023. So I count that as a win. So I would just say takeaway number 1 is acknowledge that it's really easy to just go based off of our memory and to look for what we didn't accomplish and our failures. And then that just leaves us feeling really shitty about our year before, right? And maybe feeling even hopeless going into the year ahead, that you're like, I just can't make change. And if you're someone who struggles with that thought process, I highly recommend that you listen to my last episode about micro-dosing change. And that is not with any sort of altering meds, that is making small shifts. So go check that out if that is something that you struggle with. I'll put the link to that episode in the show notes, of course. So number 2 takeaway was that we are sometimes in a headspace where we think, oh, everybody sets goals and does vision boards, and I need to do it this way to make progress. And I need to know if it's not measurable, right? So you hear the old school way of like, it needs to be measurable, specific. It has to have all these very specific details to it. And that's not how we're all wired. None of us are wired to be the same. And so maybe we give ourselves permission that some people actually need to just know how they want to feel about the year at the end of the year. It's not about the specifics and the details. Some of us are wired for that, and that's what actually gets us manifesting better. But some of us are wired to go towards more of how we feel. That's more motivating for us to tie into. I really felt like I made progress this year, but my emotions over it were I did feel a lot of stress and I did not feel enough joy. So we want to be able to look back and give ourselves a little grace that we're all wired different. You do not have to follow a specific formula. And I had to go through many, many, many different versions. I've tried with years of different techniques I've learned from different people of trying to figure out how to set goals in a way that helps me manifest them and accomplish them the best. And I've come around to kind of my own version that we did at this event. And I definitely noticed that everybody has a different way. So why not personalize it so that it feels more easeful and enjoyable for you, right? So number 3 is kind of tied to number 1. Maybe I should have done them in a different order, but that would be make sure you inventory your wins and your successes or any progress you did make. And a way that I learned to do this through coaching was to actually go back and look through your calendar. Look at, if you journaled, look through your journal, see where you made progress, but also going through your social media. Look at your posts that you did of the things, because usually we're posting things we're really happy about. And so that's an easy place to very quickly go back and look at what you shared and go, oh yeah, like I forgot that I did this trip, or there were a few things that popped up on mine that I was like, oh, I totally forgot we did that. And it's so easy to pass over those wins when we're focusing on what we didn't accomplish. So making sure you inventory what you did accomplish, like acknowledge that. Take a moment. Maybe the acknowledgement is just that you're making that list. So I sat down and wrote each year it's been between 20 and 25 like highlights or takeaways or wins or things I felt like I made big progress on. A big one for me this year was that I have consistently put out an episode every week except for the exception of a couple. And I'm really proud of that because this is my first year at it and I feel like I showed up really consistently. So that was a big win for me. I'm like patting myself on the back. So me just writing those out felt like acknowledgement and celebration in itself. So just make sure you pause this year and just appreciate what you did and some of the experiences you had and created in your life and the people that were in your life. So that's another tip. Just go back and look at those highlights. Look at the wins, guys. Got to celebrate them. Got to acknowledge them. Got to have gratitude because that's how we grow that energy. That's how we wire our brains to look for more of that so that you go into the next year going, oh yeah, I'm going to be looking for more of those because at the year end, I want to be able to look back at those wins again. So that was another one. Okay, and then number 4 is that you need to know where you started and where you want to end up. So think about when you're trying to take a trip, and we did an episode about this too a long time ago this year about like you go on an adventure and you can either just go for it and respond and react as you go, or you can go, okay, I'm going to map out my route. I'm going to put in the information to GPS. This is where I'm starting. This is where I intend to end. And so I feel that it helps us when we pause at the end of the year to look at where we are, evaluate where we've been, where our starting point is, and then deciding where I want to be at the end of 2025. That way I can kind of make a little map, right? Like how else do I know how to get from X to Y if we don't have that starting? So that's why I highly suggest taking that minute to like reflect on things that are what I would consider lessons learned, challenges you met, and also those highlights and those wins and successes and baby steps that were in the right direction. Count those. They're important. That's that starting point. And now you get to reflect like, ooh, if it was even better and closer to what my heart desires and wants, or aligns even more with my dream life I dream of, what would that look like? What would the end of 2025 look like if I was taking small micro steps towards that new version of me and my life that I want? What would that look like? So then you have that ending point, right? So now we know generally where we're going. And like I said before, we all get there differently. So you might need those specifics in a vision board or goals written out or however you need to do it, but it's really dialed in and specific, and you have steps of like, you have to meet this step by this day, you have to, and you map it out. And then there's people that are like, okay, I know that I want to feel full of health and vitality at the end of the year. And so that means I'm going to make sure I move my body 5 times a week. Very non-specific. It's not, I'm lifting weights 5 times a week for 1 hour a day, and I do it before 8 a.m. That's specific and detailed, right? And then you have people that are much more non-specific and need a more broad way to bring that experience into their life. And so when you have that starting and end point, it's a lot easier to go, okay, now what's a way I can do this that feels more aligned and easeful for my personality? Because let me tell you, I tried every different version, probably not every, but I have tried a lot of versions of how to do that. And I have found success bits inside all sorts of different techniques. But the more I learned about myself and that I actually do better with more specifics, and I love adding in the feelings, but I like to sit and marinate on what it'll feel like when I've accomplished the specific things I wrote down. That's where I really love, that's where I flourish. That's where I see more things accomplished. That's why I have like, this is a version of a vision board right behind me. And so every time I walk into my office, like I have visuals reminding me of these experiences and specific things I want to have in my life on a regular basis, because that's how I create the best. So the last one, I heard a story from another friend this week on a call, and she was talking about how, I love this. She said, you don't cut the back of your own hair. And I was like, huh? And I really think of this as like, don't try to do things all alone. Don't go at life all alone, right? And so number 5 would be that you don't cut your own hair because the back. So maybe you can cut the front of your hair, but like cutting the back of your own hair, there's a pretty good chance you're not going to be able to see it as well and get as good of perspective to do as good of a job. So it always helps to bring in somebody else that's usually a little bit more practiced and has some wisdom or guidance, or provide you insight or a different perspective on the back of your hair. Well, think of that in terms of like setting your intentions and goals for the year ahead. It is always good to reach out for perspective and guidance and input. But I also would add accountability. So not going at it alone. Don't cut your hair alone. Get accountability that you're doing it right, whatever. But the main point here is don't go at it alone. So I think about with my goals, having my own first check-in with myself was important. And so that was making space to check with my knower and think about what I thought I wanted for the year ahead and reflecting on the past year, but also being wise enough to realize that getting perspective and guidance and input from other people that have achieved some of the things I'm wanting to bring more of in my life is going to get me there quicker. And so that's where I'd say reaching out for that guidance and accountability. So accountability is kind of like the bonus part of step 5, is that accountability will help get you there too. Whether you are specific or non-specific about how you make your goals, having an accountability with somebody outside of yourself is always so much more powerful. I should have Googled the stats on when you write down the goals, like the percentage of people that achieve their goals just by writing them down is so much higher than people that just talk about it. And that doesn't mean a vision board, that's just literally documenting it somewhere. And then when you add a layer of accountability, the percentage just skyrockets on the success versus people who don't have accountability and don't write it down. So if you really want to make change, I'm giving you some secrets here, like get that accountability, get that outside guidance, do some of these reflection steps, and you will most likely see some change at the end of the year that you can look back and go, oh yeah, I did have some wins, Jamie, and celebrate, right? So I am obviously super passionate about this topic. It's something I love. I love helping other people do this. And it was such a pleasure to hold this visioning event and see people get clarity and help them get those through those reflections and be able to understand more about themselves, about how they can manifest and bring their dream life closer into them. And I have spent years in coaching classes, courses, and I have explored so many different styles of achieving goals, making shifts in my life. And I love sharing that, and I love tying in my own intuition to help people and offer guidance and clarity. So if you missed out on that event and you're somebody who's like, I'm going into the next year and I sometimes struggle to get through and get clarity about how I want my next year to look, and I don't ever feel like I have success at it, I want to help you. I love this. So if that is you, I want you to go into the show notes and contact me. And you can schedule a one-on-one. It's not too late. We're not even in 2025 yet. So if you want that shift, I promise you, if we meet, you're going to get some massive clarity you didn't think you were going to have. And I love that. That lights my fire, helping other people just go, yeah, this is how I want this year to go. And seeing you do that and then having accountability is that next powerful tool. So you have to reach out to somebody, whether it's me or somebody else in your life, get that accountability with somebody else, weekly calls, weekly text messages, or whatever the frequency, but make sure you do that accountability if you really want to seal the deal and make some change in your life. Okay? So I want to just say thank you for joining me today. I hope that if you are struggling with something like this, you will reach out. But if you also found this helpful, please share it with other people you know are looking to make changes and review their year, want something different in the year ahead. Share this and see if it helps. And if you've done some of your own reflections, I would love it if you would share with me. Like, what are some of the changes or things you want to shift? Or did you get any takeaways? If you've looked back at your last year, what are some of your wins? I want you to share some of your wins from last year with me. Like I shared about my podcast, this has been a huge thing to fill my bucket. And so I would love to hear your wins that you've experienced in 2024. And if you want more information on the play dates that I offer, that is for ladies, where we're getting out and experiencing more joy and play and connecting with other people in our community, then that is in the show notes too. So anyways, thank you for joining me, and I will see you soon.